Welcome back into the second hour of Halftime. ESPN Arkansas, hitthatline.com, live at SEC Media Days. Drew Barrett is at the College Football Hall of Fame. I'm Phil Elson at the home studio, Maddie T at ESPN Arkansas headquarters, and we're joined by SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey there right across from Drew. And Commissioner Sankey, we appreciate your time. I'm sure it's been, it's always busy for you, but especially this week. So thank you for a little bit of your time today. How are you?
I'm well. You're welcome. Drew saw me like putting on the headset as I was getting off of a phone call. That's kind of the way the week goes right now. But it's a great week to start talking about the season ahead, and a lot of energy in the building, and fun to be in this College Football Hall of Fame because you can't escape college football in this structure.
That's right. Let me ask a point-blank question about Arkansas football and its place in the SEC. What does a successful Arkansas football team mean to the SEC overall? It's already the best league in college football, even when Arkansas was struggling before Sam Pittman arrived. So now that they've won 9 games and are looking forward to hopefully increasing that next year, what do you think a successful Razorback football team means for this conference?
It means a great deal, and you saw that last year in that weekend with the win over Texas, for example, although we encourage people to stay off the field. But the energy that was present, the desire, the passion. You know, I lived in Dallas, and I'm going to shift from football to basketball back in the Southwest Conference Reunion Arena days, and I've told our staff repeatedly about the power of Razorback Nation, about the excitement around the University of Arkansas, and you've seen that in different ways over time. You know, being at the baseball stadium a few years ago when I was traveling around, or that night, the enthusiasm that Muss has brought back to basketball, and I'll tell you, the win in Tampa, that's a Big Ten opponent. I think really put a stamp on the right kind of a season of progress. Now, our league's tough, but I enjoyed talking to Sam about the prospects for the year, the enthusiasm he brings, and he's built in to building a really healthy culture in the Razorback football program. I think that means great things for the future, and that's very important to the SEC overall.
You think we might be able to at some point throw in like a waiver for one-time storm in the field if it's your hated rival that you hadn't played in years? Like, that would be the one to give them the waiver. Wouldn't that have been the one?
How about for the Garth Brooks concert? We'll
okay,
consider that a waiver, right?
That's a waiver enough because, they were on the field for that. That's a very good point. What right now, there's a lot of issues to worry about in college sports. For the SEC specifically, what is the most pressing issue in front of the Southeastern Conference?
I wish I had the opportunity to pick one. I was walking off of the other floor up the stairs on a phone call talking about one of them. You know, there are a set. So we obviously saw a league do what we did last year, which is move to 16. What that means for us first is we want to be focused on onboarding the University of Oklahoma and University of Texas in 2025 and our expansion to 16, working through scheduling models. Some of those models we've resolved, like in men's and women's basketball. Football obviously being one that's a priority for us to resolve moving forward in a relatively short order. We want to be smart about using time, but also need to prepare our schedules, and particularly our non-conference schedules, for the future. In the name, image, and likeness issue is one that's not going away. You know, I think KJ Jefferson had an announcement yesterday about a bank in the relationship. That's the stuff we expected. It's not involved in recruiting. It's the ability for one to build their brand when they're on campus. I don't know any of the details, just saw it, and the reaction is that's what we expected to happen. You know, jersey sales we expected to happen. Karis Jackson's a wide receiver at Georgia, had a Bojangles deal, and he went through biscuit making on social media. But we have a patchwork of state laws, which we never wanted, and so we have to work on solutions. And whether or not we can establish a common national standard through federal legislation remains to be seen. The NCAA's really not in a circumstance to pass a rule that makes common all the state laws because they're different. And the NCAA can't put state universities in conflict with state laws. So there's some really important work to be done there. You know, the future of the NCAA as an entity, they're going through transition in the presidency. We're looking at transformational issues on a committee. There's wide variance in Division I. That's a huge and significant factor. And then when I think locally, it's about how do we maintain the health and strength of our conference collectively, the work of our presidents and chancellors, our athletics directors, to build universities that attract young people from all across the country to be in the SEC as students, the work of our athletics directors then to build their athletic program that creates that atmosphere, that environment for alumni, fans, students to enjoy, to have the highs and the lows of competition. All of those things are incredibly important, particularly when you're going through a change in media landscape. And we're really well positioned. In fact, I would represent that some of what's happened recently has validated our decision making a year ago to move to 16, and for Arkansas to restore that Texas rivalry at an adjacent state in Oklahoma, and opportunities there for us all, but particularly given the location of those two additions. I think that's one of those positive aspects of our work.
Commissioner Sankey, you talk about the NIL stuff and how the NCAA doesn't really have a place to, have the power to make it uniformity. But in the last couple of years with the transfer portal, with NIL, with expansion, words like fair and balanced gets thrown out a lot by not only SEC coaches, but coaches all around college football. In your opinion, has college football ever actually been fair and balanced, and can it ever actually be that way where it's uniformity across the landscape and everybody's able to hold hands and sing Kumbaya?
I start with a common national standard, and we've had that at different levels. So we have minimum academic expectations, we have a playing season structure, we have when you recruit and when you don't recruit. That's a common national platform for conducting college athletic competition. We've lost some of that with these state laws. I do think that's still important. That doesn't mean, we actually in our scheduling, believe it or not, use the word fair and balanced. We heard that from our ADs. Our scheduling needs to be fair and balanced. And so then the question is, what does that mean? And we actually went through surveys and one-on-one conversations to build models about what it actually means to be fair and balanced in scheduling. And the same question's there for programs. There are going to be programs with coaches, with money, with geography, with stadiums, with history that have certain aspects of what they do that I would say are advantageous. But we've also seen, I'm going to jump out of football for a second and take softball. It wasn't that long ago when Courtney Deifel showed up on campus that Arkansas was at the bottom of the standing. And it's through effort, hiring the right people, involving the right people in your program as participants, the right kind of support, the right kind of facilities, where you've watched that program go from the cellar to the very top of the standings the last 2 years. And I think that can still happen even in our league, even with histories that are there. It's competitive enough that people can rise up and succeed. And it goes back to the first question about the opportunities for Arkansas's football program. I think the future is incredibly bright and the opportunities are there. Is that fair and balanced? They're going to have these moments when things happen. But there's a competitive opportunity based on a national standard, and that's really the need.
Now, a lot of the news the last few days has been about the college football playoff against with automatic bids. What's your stance on why does automatic bids not work in college football, but can work in maybe other sports? Although, as I've seen that you're kind of looking at a way to get rid of automatic bids in the NCAA tournament with being the co-chairman of the Transformation Committee. Are we just past it where automatic bids just don't make any more sense?
Yeah, to be clear, there was a media article that I was somehow advocating for the elimination of automatic bids in basketball. That's inaccurate.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry to misquote you.
No, that's okay. No, you read the article. It wasn't you. It was the guy that wrote the article.
I was trusting my fellow journalist is what I did.
And I can explain the context of that more specifically. But we have a history around automatic opportunities being granted for conference champions that dates back 40 or so years. Within the NCAA structure. We don't have a championship structure in football, like a playoff, that's nearly that old. In fact, we had the BCS, which was a 2-team playoff in one game, if you will, and now we have a 4-team playoff. My position is that's a much, much smaller number than anything we have at the NCAA level relative to the number of teams participating. And so we still have the need to manage the number of games total in the season. That includes how many games will be in the playoff. And we need to make sure that the best teams have access. Because one way to look at the whole automatic bid structure is that you are skipping over teams relatively 40 through 50. Right, or 38 through 50 in the RPI or the net rankings to bring in a dozen teams who are less competitive based on a season-long analysis, and that's our history. We accept that, and I'm not here to argue with that. But we don't do that in football. You don't have the space, you don't have the freedom to play 6 games to bring in more and more people. So what we said is no automatic bids in the original 12-team format, but there are 6 spaces for the 6 best conference champions. So who's ever a conference champion ranked highest among the 10 conferences, 6 of those 12 go to those conference champions. It's not an automatic bid, so it's not the Big Ten gets an AQ, the SEC gets an AQ. I'm comfortable saying I think we're good enough to earn our way in.
I think you are.
Others are not. Others want that protection. Which is a fascinating thought process, by the way. The other 6 spots in a 12-team format would be for the 6 teams most highly ranked who are not conference champions. That way you're ensuring that the top 10 is in the field. And arguably that's probably the range where somebody could have a quarterback that figures it out or a running back that gets healthy and make a run, kind of like you saw with Ole Miss in baseball. Ole Miss was the last team in, and it speaks to some of the teams we leave out because if they were the last team in and made a run to the national championship, makes you wonder what the next team, the first team left out, could have done competitively. But for football, because it's so narrow, I think less emphasis on kind of automatic bids or automatic qualifiers is a necessity.
Couple more minutes here with Commissioner Greg Sankey of the SEC, and we really appreciate your time, especially in the middle of media days. You'd mentioned your assignment responsibility as a co-chair of the Division I Transformation Committee along with Julie Cromer-Peoples, and that's a big job, that goes along with deciding and figuring out with the rest of your committee members what Division I sports are going to look like moving forward. It feels like a lot of the decision-making or power necessarily will end up going to the conferences. I mean, I've seen interviews where you said this is a big job. There's a lot of universities and presidents that are also a part of this. Is there a target date that is set for when the recommendations or when Division I sports becomes transformed?
There are 3 answers to that question. So I'm going to start with how I interpret, can we transform ourselves? That's just a heck of a question that I'm thinking about every day. We speak of transformation, but we're mired in historical practice. And to make the leap from the way it's always been to the way it needs to be is actually a significant leap. Yeah. And that's one of the challenges. And so I think that the answer to the overall question remains to be written. We will have a set of initial recommendations, first starting with deregulating around benefits to student athletes, trying to create a little bit more structure around the transfer world, dealing with some of the infractions issues and being much more timely and more focused on the really important issues. That will go to the Division I Board of Directors, I think, August 3rd. So that's the first step. And to the essence of your question, by mid-December, I think we'll be at a concluding point to forward final recommendations, at least from this iteration of the Transformation Committee, to the NCAA Board for a meeting in January. And so that right now is the timeline. But the essential question is, do we have the ability to really transform as we have disparate interests, different reasons for sponsoring Division I athletics? We have more and more members, so we have a tall task, and Julie has been a great partner with me, and hopefully myself a great partner with her as we try to think through some of these long-standing challenges that have not been dealt with directly at the Division I level of college sports.
Commissioner, last thing from me. Obviously, the SEC, is dominating across the board. You're about to add in a powerhouse in Oklahoma for softball. Arkansas made the Elite Eight. Ole Miss. And where is there a sport that you would like to see the SEC grow and gain more traction in? Because it feels like in all collegiate athletics, it's the SEC than everybody else.
I would have said pre-pandemic, women's volleyball. We had never won a national championship in women's volleyball, and then through the 2021 year, Kentucky captured our first national championship in women's volleyball, which I have to admit was one of those really cool moments. Will always be memorable for me because we'd never done that before. I look at women's soccer. We've played really well. What Colby's done is great. That atmosphere for the NCAA tournament games held in Fayetteville. I was watching online. It was just fun to see that enthusiasm. It's been a while. We're to the late 90s in Florida winning. What I really want is, winning national championships. It's a bounce of a ball here. Just a little infinitesimal difference. We want us to perform at a Final Four type level with teams every year, and that sets you up for national championship success. So, is there a sport? Yeah. My mantra was I want to graduate every student athlete. I want to win every championship, and that gives us influence to change the world. So, I want to win them all.
Last thing overall, and then we'll let you get to the rest of your day here. I know you talk about the Texas and Oklahoma aren't at the meetings at Destin. They're not at SEC Media Days. You're right now. It's the 14 teams that are part of the SEC until those two join. Is there any ever consultation with Texas and Oklahoma about things that could happen once they do join the league?
Yes. We started communication in August with the athletics directors and both university presidents just to keep them up to date, and they can keep me up to date on issues. We've had them in some meetings, the athletics directors in particular. Bringing them to Destin would have been a distraction, and we had a little bit of distraction there anyway and a lot of work to do. When they're full members, they'll be at media days. And we continue in conversation, and they do participate as we discuss some of the key issues around scheduling that will affect them when they join. So we've been a really great relationship. In fact, I talked to Chris Del Conte today, talked to Joe Castiglione last week, talked to the Oklahoma president earlier this week, and it's the opportunity to build relationships that existed but will manifest themselves in a different way in the future, which is really exciting, I think, for everyone.
We'll leave it there. Appreciate your time, Commissioner Sankey. Thank you so much for joining us and for what you do for college sports in this league.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Greg Sankey, Commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, joining us on Halftime. 877-377-6963 if you want to react to any of that.
Partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon Finals, Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BLEAV. That's BLEAV to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet online, where the game starts.